My wife and I were married for 15 years. We had one child, a daughter who was 12 at the time of this story. It was her birthday, so we ambitiously decided to host an amusement park outing for several children. Great, the only other volunteers to help us monitor these kids were the parents of one of our daughter's friends. They were married for a long time too, although I'm not sure how long. My wife used to party in her college days. By the time I met her, she was already divorced from a short marriage. Because when we met, she fell head over heels for me and said she knew I was the one she was waiting for. It was easy for her to commit herself to me, and after 3 years of marriage, we conceived. She was a stay-at-home mom, working a little from home, but mostly focusing on our daughter. She brought her to the gardening club she got involved with, where they both made friends around the area. My wife also went to the grocery store and the library, but that's not too much of a surprise. What was surprising was how long she'd spend there. Since around the time our daughter turned 11, my wife started spending exceptionally long amounts of time at the store or library, even when I was home with our daughter waiting. She didn't ask us to go with her, but we didn't really want to either. I didn't expect her to do anything else at that time, and I didn't expect her to take so long on purpose. Still, even with this happening, we had date nights, alone time, and family nights. My wife would put down her phone to spend time with us, and even though I saw it lighting up, I always thought it was friends she made from the gardening club or other moms of kids our daughter played with. One day, my wife said she made a playdate for our daughter at the park. I asked her if I could come. She tried to ask if I had something work-related to take care of, and I laughed awkwardly and said no, she should have known I didn't. She texted a little before we left, and when we got to the park, another couple was there. They were the parents of our daughter's friend. Introductions were fine and friendly. I was under the impression that my wife met this woman somewhere and arranged the playdate. This woman was under the impression that her husband met me somewhere and arranged the playdate with our kids. My wife seemed to speak more directly to App, not the woman I thought she was friends with. Then I thought I was just being obsessive, because any question in the couple's direction is for either of them to answer. But this guy seemed so eager to be the one to answer my wife. I just tried to focus on playing with the kids, distracting myself from worrying about something that amounted to nothing. My wife continued spending long amounts of time at the grocery store or library, wherever she said she was going. Sometimes my daughter and I got home from work and school to find she was out doing something. I wait for her to return, but I grow sick of it. But when she got home one night, I confronted her. I told her there was no reason for her to be out for so long, and she was missing out on tiredness. We needed her home. My wife wasn't receptive to this like I thought she'd be. She was defensive and upset. She said she needed this time away because for the past 12 years she'd been stuck in the same house without any adventure. I was shocked. I listed all the adventures or things we did, whether alone or with our child. My wife seemed to snap back to normal after my rant. She asked me for more date nights, but I knew we went out often enough. Us anymore, and our daughter might think we didn't want to spend time with her. At the amusement park for our daughter's birthday, we kept the group together at first, but eventually the kids wanted to go on different rides. But to better accommodate the crowd, we split into two groups to wait in line at rides adjacent to each other, with A and his wife in one line and me and my wife in another. After getting pretty close, my wife said she had to go to the bathroom. I watched her until she was far enough away to measure half the size of my pinky. She went into the family bathroom, which I thought was odd. Then I saw App jump inside the bathroom too. I screamed and yelled, but it only made the people around me jump. I had no choice but to stand in line with the kids until they got on the ride. Then I raced over to bang on the door. My wife's voice panicked when she said it's occupied. I told her it was me and demanded she let me in, but she just repeated over and over that she couldn't open the door. The ride was stopping, so I raced back to gather the kids. I couldn't believe the situation I was in, keeping watch over a bunch of kids for my daughter's birthday while my wife snuck into the bathroom with another man. What was she thinking? I got the kids to walk with me over to the bathrooms, but before we got close, my wife came out and App dodged to hide behind a tree. My wife was pale as a ghost and sweating. I think she knew she was caught, as App rejoined his wife moments before our group met up with them. I told my wife, App and his wife, that I just saw them go into the family bathroom together. App's wife freaked out. She asked him if it was true, and he didn't know what to say, so she started hitting him. My wife tried to stop it, for the children's sake, but that was a terrible idea because she started hitting her instead. I wanted so badly to jump in, but I knew I had to be the bigger person. I got security to help us get back to our cars. All the disappointed children were back home. I ordered my wife to let me see her phone. I looked through it and found the dating app with App's messages. It's artificially funny how neither of them mentioned being married until after they met up a few times to cheat on their spouses. I tried to use her phone to send proof to App's wife, but she grabbed it back. I told her to pack and get out. She broke down and even handed me back her phone. She said she would do absolutely anything for a second chance to remain my wife. I told her no, but did get the chance to send App's wife the proof, ensuring neither of us would have to give our spouses anything in the divorce. While my wife cried, our daughter came in to ask what was going on. She broke down even more and looked at me. Of course, she couldn't bring herself to tell her what she did, but she did say she messed up badly and needed to move out of the house. They were both crying, and it was hard for me to watch. I just kept assuring myself this was what I had to do, and if I didn't, our daughter would grow up to think it was okay to cheat on the man she loved. My ex did get to see our daughter frequently, and I'm glad for that, so it might be less traumatic for her, but it was still hard, and it was still all my ex's fault. She and App got a place together, and the divorces were made final. Nearly 2 years later, my ex called me. I thought it would be about the next visit she had with our daughter, But it wasn't that. She was sobbing, just like she did on the day I discovered her affair. She told me App cheated on her and she was very newly pregnant. I didn't know what advice to give her, but when she asked me if she could move back in, that was a big fat no. She cried and made it clear that her life would be miserable. I wished her luck. So she stayed in Ape's house, even though he cheated on her whenever he wanted. He doesn't help her with the baby at all, from what she tells me, and she hates her life. She didn't know how cruel and pointless life could be until she cheated on me and lost everything she took for granted. Since the divorce, I've been healing. I started dating a girl, and we've been together for a year, but she hasn't moved in. I need to make sure she's worth marrying first, and if she isn't, I'll start over again. That is quite the nightmare situation. You had a great thing going and did your best to keep your wife happy, but she didn't think it was enough. After committing herself for so long, I wish she could have learned to value this bond the two of you formed. That to the life you built together, and the life you two created didn't deserve to be thrown away or taken for granted. Thankfully, I think she learned that lesson, but it was too late. Now it's only a bitter reminder of what she'll likely never find again. You knew how to handle this, even with how difficult it was, and you know how to adjust to whatever life throws at you. Just in handling problems with grace and strength is something strong men are particularly good at. I wish you the best of luck in life, and thank you for sharing your story. Now let's get into our second story for today. My wife and I went to Paris for our 16th wedding anniversary. I am a lawyer, so for more than 16 years, my wife didn't have to worry about money or finances. She shopped for our groceries online. Well, more than just groceries, she could have whatever she wanted, and I'm sure that made it easier for her to sit back and enjoy our marriage for a while. Our relationship was great. She never complained. Besides here, our relationship might have only lasted as long as it did because she was afraid to have her own opinions or tell me what was on her mind. I had a basic idea of her likes and dislikes, but most of the time, whatever I said was law. I liked it that way. In Italy, we settled into our room and got ready for dinner. There was a restaurant right by the hotel. Just before we were meant to leave, one of my clients called me about something important. I told my wife to go get a table and I'd be there in a few minutes. As Terry, I regret doing that, but it still doesn't change what she did during this time. It took me over an hour to fix the issue with my client. By the time I got to the restaurant, I could see her sitting with another man at an outside table. When I approached, he respectfully greeted me and let me sit down. He said he was keeping the weirdos away until I got back. He wished us well and left. I asked her about him and she told me she'd shooed him away once, but when I didn't come down, he sat down again. He seemed nice and charming. That's all she said about it. I noticed her texting later that night while I was on the phone. She said it was her mom giving her updates about her dad. Before we went to bed, she suggested we go to the market in the morning, calling it a charming activity, just like she described something else. Air at the market. I answered my phone while we strolled and my wife looked at things. She was used to me taking phone calls and didn't interrupt. About 10 minutes must have passed, and they thought my wife was following closely behind me, but when I looked over, I realized it wasn't her. I looked around for her, and she was gone. I yelled her name, and she didn't come back. I tried calling her a few times until she finally answered. She apologized and said she had to go to the bathroom so badly that she ran back to the hotel. She said she'd be back in a few minutes, so I didn't need to walk back if I didn't want to. I decided to wait, and it's later. I started walking back to the hotel and tried calling her again. When I got back, she wasn't there. That's when she answered the phone. I was really upset. I asked her what kind of game she was playing. She just laughed and said she was walking back to the market and must have missed me. She said her phone was going to die and the call dropped. I couldn't believe it. I went back to the market and searched for her to no avail. I was extremely furious at this point. I went to the bar across from the hotel and watched our hotel entrance. A nice English-speaking girl started talking to me and kept me calm until I saw my wife get out of a car and kiss her goodbye. I ran up to them screaming. I got back in the Uber and sped away, yelling out the window that he'd pick her up later. I was fuming when I asked her what the hell was going on. I kid you not, without missing a beat, she said she didn't need me anymore. Apparently, Up was going to take care of her from now on. He fell in love with her while I was too busy to spend time with her. I lost it and asked if she was crazy for thinking some guy could possibly replace what we have together. A crowd was gathering to watch us. All she was thinking about was living in Paris for the rest of her life. She didn't think about me or her family back home, or what would happen if AP left her. She told me breaking up was never easy, but it was time for us to move on, and that happens to people. I called her many names and said I didn't deserve her abandonment just because she spent a few hours with a stranger. She didn't care and tried to go upstairs to our hotel room to get her stuff. I beat her there, locked her out, and started throwing her stuff off the balcony. Loose clothes, jewelry, cards, passport, and toiletries. As the sun set on our first day in Paris, I came back and helped her pick up everything off the street while I yelled curses at them both. When I woke up, it felt like a dream. I could hardly believe this was my reality. I looked in the mirror and decided I deserved to enjoy myself a little. I went across the street to the bar. The bartender woman I met the night before was there, and she agreed to give me a tour after I told her my story. We saw the landmarks, practiced French, went swimming, and ate croissants, so I had at least one great day in Paris. I had no idea where my wife was, and she didn't try contacting me. I suddenly remembered she had access to our bank account, so I turned off her card. Then I returned home without her. It was just 4 months later that she showed up, begging me to let her stay here for a few days at least. I laughed in her face. She said she hated what I did to her, leaving her in another country without money. I reminded her that she said App was going to take care of her, and she left me for another man on our anniversary vacation. She took a deep breath and apologized. She said it didn't mean as much to her as she thought it did. It was a fantasy she wanted to live out and nothing more. But now that she was back, she expected me to forgive her so we could continue our lives again. I showed her our divorce decree and slammed the door in her face. She had to move quickly, otherwise it probably would have broken her nose. She went to stay at her parents' house and acted like it wasn't a big deal that she was back from her new life. They asked her a million questions, and they were devastated when they found out she didn't get anything from the divorce. She was starting over in her mid-40s with nothing because she let her ego grow to gigantic proportions when she left me for a stranger in Paris. OP, I am so sorry your wife betrayed you like this. It is shocking that she felt bold and delusional enough to sneak away from you and lead you on a goose chase so she could spend time alone with a stranger. She must have been a very inconsiderate and selfish woman to let herself think she could live this dream after betraying you. Anyone doing this must have no conscience at all. I know you'll be able to move on from this. You were strong enough to leave her, which is the least she deserved for being so evil and self-centered. You were wise for staying emotionally strong and turning her away. Thank you for sharing your story. You're an example to us all on how to handle such a tragedy. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care, and thank you all for the support.